Today we're going to talk about the 8 extraordinary vessels and how to utilize them in clinical practice to get really great results with patients. Tapping into the 8 extra vessel is something I love to do in my clinic, and I wanted to share it with you today so you can benefit from it, and of course your patient would benefit from it too. Hi, I'm Clara from AcuPro Academy, and I create Chinese medicine and acupuncture content for practitioners and students like you, making it easy to grasp and fun to learn. Let's do this. So many of you have asked for me to talk about the 8 extra vessels because I think when I was back in school, in TCM school, we didn't learn a lot about them. It was very quickly brushed over it, and they told us about the confluent point or the connecting point to each of the 8 vessels, but it's very quick, and I didn't understand them in a deep way or how to use them in clinical practice. Over the years, I have taken many seminars, read books, specifically from Dr. Yvonne Farrell. Thank you, Yvonne, because she is my go-to when it comes to learning more in-depth knowledge about the 8 extra vessel. So I wanted to share with you all those years of experience, knowledge in a quick, easy way like I like to do it. So it kind of gives you a start. And then if you want to go deeper, you can go and look for more information. Does that sound good? All right. So let's talk about the 8 extraordinary vessel. First, the characteristics. The characteristics of the vessel is they are going to be 8 of them, and they all connect to the kidneys, the TCM kidneys, through essence or Jing. Because what happened is when we look at the 8 vessels is that they are the connection to essence, which means they connect to our genetics, our reproductive system, our aging system. So this is a really good way to try to figure out how to do preventative medicine, reproductive medicine, and looked into our past generation cells, which we still carry within us today. And those are the vessels we're going to use when there is intergenerational trauma or childhood trauma, something we carry for a long time emotionally. So those vessels are great when we want to tap into a physical part of us, but also emotional part. So come on, fantastic. I love those vessels. Now, the only 2 that have points are the Ren and the Du. And I'm going to look at all of them, and we're going to see how to use them in clinical practice. So let's familiarize ourselves with the names because I'm going to keep them in pinyin. I don't like to use the English translation because I think sometimes words change depending on the book that you're reading. So I'm going to talk about that, but I'm going to keep it really pinyin and Chinese. That's the way I like to do it. So we have yin and yang vessels. We have 4 yin and 4 yang vessels, which are counterpart from each other. And so if we look at the first 2, the one that we knew, which is the Ren and the Du, which have their own points. They're the only one that have actually their own points, while the other 6 have crossing points with the main 12 meridians. And that's how we tap into those. So the Ren meridian or the Ren vessel is the counterpart to the Du. The Ren is in the front, the Du is in the back. The Ren vessel is often called also the conception vessel. So often it's CV. I don't like to change it to English. I like to keep it to the Ren because it's very specific to itself. And it doesn't just talk about conception, or it doesn't address only conception, right? Ren 22 is really good for asthma and breathing difficulties. Ren 17 is for anxiety. It has nothing to do with just conception. So that's why I like to keep it the Ren. The Du is often called the governing vessel or GV, governing vessel. Again, it's governing the young part of our body, our head, our back, and I like to kind of step away from that. So again, I'm going to call it the Ren and the Du and not the conception or governing. The next one are the Chong and the Dye. So again, translation. The Chong often in books is going to be called the gathering or the penetrating vessel. Those are the 2 words that I see the most often. The Dye meridian is the one that is often called the belt or the girdle, because it goes kind of like around the waist, right? So that's often the translation. That's why I like to keep it Chong and Dye again instead. And obviously the Chong is a yin meridian, the Dye is a yang meridian. Then we have the other four that are really the same name, one yin, one yang. So we have yin Whey and yang Whey. Whey is really in here is translated as linking, as in to link. You're linking one part with another part. So often it's called the yin linking vessel or the yang linking vessel. And the last one is the yin chow and the yang chow. And chow means your heel, right? Like Achilles, your heel above your, below your ankle. So it's the yin heel and the yang heel. And the reason I explain that is because with the French accent, sometimes people don't know what I'm saying. So thank you for understanding that. French girl teaching Chinese in English. Woohoo! But I know you guys enjoy that as well. So those are the 8 extraordinary vessels. Those are the one we're going to tap into in clinical practice, and they are the one we're going to talk about today. Like I said, the first 2 have their own points. The others borrow point or cross point from the 12 regular meridians. So now let's look at each individual ones and how they function and how we can utilize them in clinical practice. Let's do this. Let's look at the Ren and the Du vessel first. The Ren vessel is also called the sea of all yin meridian. It is so yin. It's all in the middle of the front of the body. And its function is to address reproductive system issues, specifically for women, but also for men, as well as lower jiao issue like urinary tract issues, the middle jiao, so digestive problem, and the upper jiao with chest issues, including calming the mind. This is a great meridian to calm the mind because it has ghost points like Ren 1 or Ren 24, which are powerful ghost points. And if you haven't seen my ghost point video, check it out there. It was a live session, so bypass the singing at first and watch it. It's full of great nuggets. Now, the Ren vessel has a confluent point called Long 7. And Long 7 is going to connect the main meridian to the extraordinary vessel, specifically for the reproductive system. And we're going to pair it with Kidney 6, which is the confluent point of the Yin Chow vessel. So we're going to understand later how we pair those confluent points, because there's 8 of them, or 1 per vessel. The most common points on the Ren vessel used in clinical practice are going to be Ren 4, Ren 6, Ren 12, Ren 17, but Ren 14 is also a great point because it's a front move point of the heart, so really good to calm the mind for anxiety, specifically with Ren 17. Okay, so that's for the Ren as a whole, more physical. However, the Ren is also where we tap into our self-love, self-care, and very nurturing feminine side. So tapping into the Ren meridian, it's tapping into your feminine side and allowing yourself to understand that if you're not taking the time to self-care, self-love, and be nurturing to yourself or to others, then there is an imbalance in the blockage on the Ren vessel. So we can work on that. And I see a lot of women patients that come in and take care of everybody else but themselves. There is definitely an imbalance. Often, people will have a belly button piercing, women specifically, and that is overstimulating of Ren 8, which is your connection. Ren 8 is your belly button, the connection to your uterus, but also to your umbilical cord attached to your mother, right? So that relationship is, if there's no self-care or nurturing from that person to themselves, the belly button ring might not be a good idea. That's just my opinion because I've seen it a lot in clinical practice. Good? Okay, so now let's look at the opposite, which is the Du vessel, which is all in the back and goes up to the head. The head is the most young part of your body, all the way to the front. So this whole back and head vessel is very young. It is the sea of all young meridian. The confluent point is small intestine 3. That's a fantastic point, specifically when there is any back issue, upper, middle, or lower back issue. This is the best distal point to add to your treatment. It pairs with bladder 62, which is the confluent point of the yang chow meridian, which is the opposite of the yin chow, which was kidney 6, right? So very much opposite. And I'll talk about the confluent point and how to use them later on. The function of the Dye vessel in general in clinical practice, because it goes through all the back, is to strengthen the spine, to address any issue of the male and female reproductive system, issue of the brain, marrow, central nervous system for like dizziness, epilepsy, anything that has to do with tremors and issue with the central nervous system. However, it also helps with expelling pathogen because pathogens are yang in nature, and this is the most yang vessel. The most used point in clinical practice, I will say, is of course Dye 4, because it's the Mingmen, right? Very much the fire of who we are. Dye 20, Dye 1. A lot of people think that we don't use Dye 1. I use Dye 1 a lot. It's a really good point. And Dye 14 specifically with cupping or for external pathogens in general. But we use a lot of other points, like Dye 9 is great for epileptic attack. It's such a great point. So that's the nutshell of the Ren and the Dye. When it comes to the Dye in the emotional aspect that's connecting to our cellular level, is passion is one. So it's not just being passionate about, having intercourse or having our libido all fired up. It's passion about anything, passion about a subject, passionate about something like mountain biking, you're passionate about playing golf or reading or whatever it is. Having a passion, a motivation to learn, to be passionate about something. It's also our capacity to think clearly. So that's really important. That's the brain capacity. It's our independent personality. If you meet someone that's not independent, that always needs other people, their Dye meridian has blockage. Does that make sense? And then our determination. The Dye vessel is in charge of how motivated and determined we are. So when people are not determined or have no motivation, we have to look at what's blocking on the Dye vessel. Pretty cool, no? All right, let's keep going. Let's look now at the Chong versus the Dye vessel. The Chong vessel is the sea of blood, which means it connects to the female reproductive system very well. It's also the sea of Yuan Qi, source Qi. And so what does that mean in clinical practice? It's very grounding. It brings the energy down to our feet. So that's really cool. And it is really connected to kidney and spleen meridian. The confluent point is spleen 4, which is such a point we use for fertility, for pregnancy, for any female reproductive system. And then we pair this with Pericardium 6, which is the confluent point of the yin Whey vessel. It's also the Chong vessel, the sea of all 12 main meridian, all Zongfu meridians. So it is so powerful in its function. It addresses issue of the digestive system, the chest, the stomach, the heart. It is going to be addressing blood issues, specifically, like I said, for women. It also calms the mind. So it's a very powerful meridian. I think it's one of my favorite vessel, the Chong vessel. I use it a lot in clinical practice. And of course, it does cross the main meridians and doesn't have its own point. But the crossing point, or Ren 1, which we can understand is very much for reproductive system, stomach 30, kidney 11 to kidney 21. So a lot of chest point as well. So it does address asthma and breathing abilities as well as reproductive system. When it comes to the mind or the emotional aspect of the Chong vessel, which I'm always fascinated by because it's really kind of cool, I think. Anyway, it is our ability to balance love and logic, or heart and our brain. Sometimes you make decisions with your brain, sometimes you follow your gut or your heart. That's what the Chong vessel balance is. The ability to think logically, but still have our emotions involved in the decision. Does that make sense? It also gives us our authentic self. When people are authentic and they're real, their Chong vessel is very strong. When people are needing to put up an image all the time, to be really to do the fake image. And I know it's a self-preservation, it's a fear, it's all about issues. But that means the Chong Meridian is very blocked. There's issue of the Chong vessel when people are fake and are not being authentic to others or even to themselves. And that's the case with a lot of people I see in clinical practice as well. And you could see that with having the Chong vessel very blocked, and we can use those points to kind of smooth that over. Pretty cool, no? It's also the vessel we use for intergenerational trauma and the one we use for people that have bad habits. Let's say you chew on your nail all the time, or you have habits that are detrimental to your own well-being. That is a great meridian to use. Okay, so now let's talk about the Dye Vessel, the girdle, the only vessel and the only meridian of all meridians we know, the 12 regular, everything, anything, the collateral, the divergent, the muscular region. This is the only vessel that actually is horizontal instead of vertical, which is kind of cool. It makes it really interesting, right? So the Dye Vessel is often called the girdle, as I said earlier, or the belt, because it's the only one that is going to be squeezing your waist kind of thing, right? It's the one that holds everything in place because it's the belt. It holds your pants up. Make sense? Okay. The main functions of the Dye Vessel is to hold everything in place, like I said, like your belt. That means that it's great for prolapse, for anything that's going to drop specifically. It's going to hold in place and protect the hip, the pelvic floor, the whole hip girdle area. So it's great for reproductive system issues, but also for external genitalia issue because it is connected to the sangyow and the gallbladder, which are great to eliminate damp heat specifically in the lower jiao. So external genitalia issue, that is a great meridian for that as well. It's also connected to the liver and gallbladder. So we'll see it's really good for migraine and headaches that are more in liver headache, like liver yang rising or Shaoyang headaches. We use gallbladder 41, which is the confluent point of the Dye Vessel, in pair with Sanjiao 5, which is a confluent point of the Yang Whey vessel. So those two we often use specifically when there's damp heat. We'll see that a bit later. When it comes to the emotional aspect of the dye is the container. It contains all our emotion. So childhood trauma would be contained in the dye. And that's often the case. I see this in clinical practice when people have childhood trauma and they have a lot of pelvic floor issues, specifically women, like painful menstruation, fibroids that keep growing back even though they were, taken care of. Like literally the trauma is sitting in that hip girdle and creating some issue. It's also our self-preservation vessel. So when there is no self-preservation, there is an issue with the Dye Vessel. As well as when it comes to survival, right? To be able to have survival skills, that is the Dye Vessel. Security and stability, obviously it's stabilized. Stability and security comes from the dye. So if someone is looking constantly for security and stability, it's because they feel like they don't have enough or they're not having the ability to be safe enough or stable enough. So there is an issue with the dye because we want a balance. We want stability, we want security, but we want to be able to also not be obsessed with just being so safe all the time. However, also fear, constant fear of not having enough safety, not enough money, not enough love, not enough connection, not enough. We just worry all the time and fearful. That's a dye issue. Pretty cool. I think it's pretty cool because I see this in clinical practice and you can use point to release, to open those vessels so there's better flow and people actually start to behave differently and connect with themselves at a deeper level. That's why acupuncture is so amazing and it rocks. Acupuncture rocks! Are you enjoying my graphics so far? Well, you can find them all in my AcuPoint Made Easy, an illustrated guide to all acupuncture points, and so much more. The PDF version has a lot of video links. You can download it on your phone, your tablet, your computer, and have it at your fingertips at any time. It has a great table of contents. The hard copy ships all over the world. If you're someone that loves to hold a book and really enjoy the colorful part of my graphics, you'll find them all exactly the same as the PDF in the hard copy book. The feedback has been amazing. As you could see here, so many people have just loved the book or the PDF or both. So what are you waiting for? Click the link below and get your copy today. Let's get back to what we're talking about today. Okay, so now let's look at the yin Wei versus the yang Wei vessel. The yin Wei governs all interior part of the body, specifically the yin qi, Y-I-N-G, yin qi or nutritive qi, which is really the interior part of the meridian. When it comes to the yin Wei, it's also going to be in charge of the flow of qi in all the 12 meridians, and it regulates blood. So it is connected to a lot of our essence part as well, and it connects to all 12 meridians. It harmonizes all the 5 spirits, the Shen, the Po, the Hun, the Je, and the Yi. It's also in charge of calming the mind, like all 8 vessels, because they connect to essence and the brain, so they all connect to the mind and calming the mind. And it opens the heart. It's also going to address issues of sinews, tendons, ligaments, and muscle for B syndrome, for example. So it's a really good vessel to use in clinical practice. And the Confluent Point is Pericardium 6. Which is opposite of Sanjiao 5, right? And they are opposite in that perspective. So we use those two together often. You can thread them or you can have 2 points depending on how you're going to use them. But this is a point we use a lot because the crossing point as well of the yin Wei meridian are going to be very useful in clinical practice. Specifically, let's say kidney 9. Kidney 9 is one of the best points for bipolar or anxiety or people that have mood swings. Such a great point to calm the mind. And then yin Wei, like I said, is really connected to the mind. The yin Wei connection to our cellular being is our ability to transition in life easily. So it is associated often with self-image and aging. So when people have that midlife crisis or they are very scared of aging or they have a problem with their self-image and aging, the yin Wei is out of balance because this is the vessel that's going to allow us to transition to the next stage of our lives easily and letting go of the youth that we had before and still be happy about this new transition. Does that make sense? So I have a lot of patients that benefit from this vessels, and you can use crossing point for that as well. The yang Wei vessel is complete opposite of yin Wei one. It governs the external part of the body, and in though connecting with the Wei qi, the defensive qi, the qi that circulates in the meridian more on the surface, while the yin qi is more deep within the body. So it's opposite, right? Because of that, it's in charge of the immune system, because of course it's our defense system. It's more in charge of the outside of our body. And it is for back issues as well, but also ear issue, specifically because it eliminates damp in the liver and gallbladder channel, affecting the ear. So when there are recurring ear problem or ear infection or hearing issues, that is connected to the yang Wei vessel. So I like that to look at it. It also still, like the yin Wei, regulates qi within the meridians and blood, but in a yang perspective. So they really work together, those two. And we're going to pair it with gallbladder 41 because gallbladder 41 is great, but because it addresses issues of the ear. So that's a really good pair as well. So those two we're going to utilize as opposite, but sometimes together. That's why often you can also use PC6 and Sanjiao 5 together. That would work quite well, actually, when we want to address issues that are affecting both. There is crossing point as well, as you can see on the yang Wei vessel, that we can use in clinical practice. The yang Wei, when it comes to the cellular emotional level, is in charge of being able to have relationships that are flourishing and growing and not sabotaging them. If you self-sabotage relationship over and over and over, the yang Wei vessel is stuck. It feels stuck. So it's really in charge of having flourishing, beautiful relationship and connecting with others, because yang Wei means linking, right? It's yang linking. You're linking to others, which I think is really, really cool. It's also in charge of moving forward. So if you feel stuck and you can't move forward, you can't let go of the past, you can't go and make changes, there's an issue of the yang way. So when people have a hard time and they can't go forward and they're stuck in one place, then that is an issue of the yang way. So we can use that to help them get unstuck and move forward. Pretty cool. The last two, the yin chow versus the yang chow. So the yin chow is going to be in charge, I should say, of muscular activity, specifically on the lower limb. It's also in charge of being able to close our eyes at night and have beautiful sleep. Nighttime is yin time, right? So if there is a lot of insomnia, specifically people that work shift, which is really hard because then they have to sleep during the day, this is a great meridian to utilize to help them sleep. That's why kidney 6 is such a great point for insomnia, specifically when there is anxiety, fear, or shift work, because the body is all upside down from nature, from the way we're supposed to sleep, which is during the night. So that's a really good meridian for that. It's also going to address lower jaw issue like external genitalia issue, but also for postpartum health. It's also in charge of thyroid health, so very much related to a lot of women disorders that I see in clinical practice. When it comes to the emotional aspect of the yin chow meridian, it is going to be connected to how we stand up for ourselves, how we don't let people run over ourselves, how we don't let people taking advantage of us, right? We're not a doormat. And if you have patients and everybody takes advantage and the patient allows that, then they need to stand up for themselves. We need to give them strength. We give them the strength to finally learn to say no, which is not easy to do. It took me a long time to do that, right? It's with growth, with time, that eventually you learn to say no. It's also going to be our introverted side when we need to self-reflect, to calm down. And I have patients that hate to be by themselves, to be alone with their own thoughts. That's a problem with the yin chow vessel, because it is important to be with your own thoughts and take the time to self-reflect. We need to balance this with go and activities like the yang chow. Make sense? Okay, so kidney 6 is the confluent point of the yin chow, and we pair it with lung 7, which is the ren vessel confluent point. So often we put those two together, and we use the crossing point as well, really well for addressing sleep issue like kidney 6, like I said, which is often the case. Now the yang chow is the opposite. So the yang chow vessel is in charge of keeping our eyes open during the day. So if people are sleepy and they just want to sleep all the time during the day, that is an issue with the yang chow. The yang chow can also treat insomnia with the yin chow. Usually you can use them both together because the yin chow is supposed to close our eyes at night and be able to sleep. The yang chow has to keep our eyes open during the day. However, sometimes the yang chow is so in excess that at night the eyes won't close and the person is tired but they can't fall asleep. They're wired up and they can't fall asleep. So that's a yang chow issue. So we often use them in pair, which makes sense because they're completely opposite, right? And so they work well together to balance everything. They're also, as you can see, in charge of muscular activity in the lower legs, just like the yin chow. So they complement each other. They also are in charge of the gait, your posture. So the yang chow is in charge of your posture, of having balance, being able to balance yourself so you're not tripping. So someone with great balance, and you can work at this, is a strong yang chow. Good? The confluent point is bladder 62, which is really in charge of the head, the neck, the spine, which is great. And we combine it with small intestine 3, which is the du meridian, which goes all along the spine, confluent point. So it's very much for the gait, for the spine, for posture. And what's interesting about this is looking at the emotional aspect or the cellular mental aspect of the yang chow. That is looking at the extroverted part of us, at us wanting to be in the world and connect with others. So again, it's a balance. We need introverted time, but we need extroverted time where we connect with others and we are active. Now, the yang chow can be in excess when people are go all the time and they never stop. to go into the yin introverted side. And that's a problem when that is out of balance. Also, the yang chow is also out of balance when people are very judgmental of others. They criticize everybody. And so I've had patients over the years that have that temperament where everybody else is bad. Everything is, and then it's all other people's fault, and it's this person and that person. That is a yang chow issue. You can calm that down, rebalance it though, so the person can be more balanced and not just criticizing and judgmental of others all the time, and see a better outcome, because obviously that's not a positive outcome. Does that make sense? So it's really cool. I think that's pretty cool. Don't you think so? I hope it brought some light on how to start looking at the 8 vessels and what to use them for in clinical practice. Now, the 8 conferential point of the 8 extra vessels, I use a lot in clinical practice. There is a lot of school of thoughts out there. A lot of people will say, oh, you're tapping, if you use those points, you tap into essence, you might deplete the person. I've been doing this for a long time, and I've been learning a lot from Jeffrey Yuan and Yvonne Farrell, and I follow their teaching because I really like the way they practice, and it's been working really well for me. So I'm not really concerned about tapping into essence and losing Jing, G-I-N, not Jin as in, the drink, but Jing as in essence, G-I-N-G. Okay, so let's look at lung 7, kidney 6, pericardium 6, spleen 4, small intestine 3, bladder 62, Sanjal 5, gallbladder 41. Those are the conferential points that we often pair with opposite. So in clinical practice myself, I have to say that those 4 here, I use a lot when I want to rebalance hormones. Specifically for female hormones. So it could be anything, irregular menstruation. It could be during pregnancy. It could be, morning sickness. It could be menopausal issue. It could be hot flashes. It could be anything with painful menstruation. Anything that's affecting the female reproductive system, including specifically the uterus and that system of menstruation, right? That's why menopause is the end of menstruation, or during menstruation, or during pregnancy where we're growing a baby and the uterus is now used for something else. I use those 4 points. I don't use 8 needles. Usually I follow the teaching of Giovanni Machocha, for me, the teacher that also taught me a lot from his book. So I love that. And so I put it opposite. So lung 7 on the right, kidney 6 on the left, PC6 on the left, and spleen 4 on the right. This is how I like to do it. And often people ask me, why is that? Well, if you look at the first 2, kidney 6 is related to kidney, which is related to essence, which is very yin. Left side is the yin side. While lung 7 is connected to air breathing, which is the ability to breathe. So it's more yang, it's more qi. So that's the right side. The right side is yang side. So that's usually how we do it. Having said that, if you do the opposite, it's not the end of the world. It's just that we want to have 2 on the wrist and 2 on the ankle, and the opposite side, so you have less needles. I'm the school of thoughts that the least amount of needles, the better the treatment. I don't want to use 50 needles because that's overstimulation. Make sense? Okay, when it comes to those ones are the yang points, while the first 4 are the yin point, right? So I often use this here to treat the male reproductive system, specifically with lung 7 and kidney 6. So that I'm going to use to treat the male reproductive system, while those 2 is going to be the female. So let's see. This is the female reproductive system. Okay. Oh my God, I can't write. In here, those 2 here. And this one here is more the male, right? So that's how I do it. I love to use small intestine 3, bladder 62 to rebalance the male reproductive system with those 2 to try to connect. And you can use dew 4 and other dew points for the male because the male is more yang in nature. This one, the last 2, you can use both in male and female. This is for lower jiao damp heat. Okay, damp heat in the lower jiao, specifically affecting the pelvic floor. So external genitalia outbreak, like herpes outbreak, for example, Or it could be a lot of vaginal discharge, maybe a yeast infection for women. That would be those 2 points. Or there is pelvic inflammatory disease, PID, that's affecting the whole pelvic floor. Those points are really good for that because they are decreasing the inflammation in the pelvic floor. So that's how I use those 6 to 8 points, depending how you use them in clinical practice, in an easy way. Of course, you have to do a TCM diagnosis for each patient and follow your diagnosis and your treatment plan. But there are some points that we use in conjunction with each other to really tap into the essence, to tap in the 8th vessel, and to look at the reproductive system from that perspective. So for me, that has worked really well in clinical practice for many years. I have a course on fertility, a course on pregnancy. They're online, they're at your own pace, and you get CEUs for them. You can check them out on my website, AcuProAcademy.com. In both those courses, I talk a lot about how to use those 8 points specifically for the female reproductive system. I hope that was useful and that gave you an idea on to start really looking into the 8th vessel more and more. Thank you for being here. I have so much more on my website resource page, so go check it out because I have treatment protocols, I have free courses, I have a lot of PDF that you can use in clinical practice. I hope you have a fantastic day, and no matter what, keep rocking it using TCM. I hope you enjoyed the content today and found a lot of value into it. Please subscribe so you do not miss out on any future videos, and watch those 2 here to have more content for you to enjoy and absorb.